Agent Général Tremblay, bonjour. Distinguished guests, inductee family members, and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this 2013 Wall of Honour Annual Induction Ceremony. Bienvenue à la cérémonie d'intronisation annuelle de 2013 au mur d'honneur. Je suis 25861, aspirant de marine Tristan Lapointe, commandant de l'escadron 7, et je serai votre maître de cérémonie aujourd'hui. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is 25861, Naval Cadet Tristan Lapointe, Cadet Squadron Leader of 7th Squadron, and I will be your Master of Ceremony today. Pedestals displaying the CMC badge crest, as well as a smaller informative plaque explaining the significance of the wall, have been added to this year to each end of the wall.
As a Commandant of the Royal Military College of Canada, it's a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity to welcome you to the Wall of Honour ceremony this afternoon. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the former speaker, Mr. Peter Milliken. I don't see Peter, but I hope he is here. Not here? Okay. Okay. I know he wanted to be here with us this afternoon. And I believe we may have Miss Dorothy Hector here. Yes, thanks, ma'am, for coming and representing our mayor, Mr. Mark Garrison. Thank you. With us today, of course, is Major General Tremblay, Commander of the Canadian Defence Academy, and Major General Foster, the Deputy Commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force, members of the RMCC Board of Governors, Ex-Cadet Club, RMC Foundation, and class, of course, of 1963. I also wish to acknowledge all other fellow general and flag serving and retired officers, distinguished guests, RMCC principal, senior staff and faculty members, cadets of the Royal Military College of Canada, friends and family. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, lastly, a warm welcome to the families of this year's inductees. We're absolutely honored by your presence. La fin de semaine des anciens du Collège militaire royal du Canada est une occasion où confluent le passé et le présent, un pèlerinage symbolique des anciens élèves officiers qui reviennent dans l'ancien du collège pour se faire les témoins de rite de passage des nouveaux élèves officiers. C'est pourquoi il s'agit du moment idéal dans la routine du collège pour une cérémonie comme celle-ci. For many years, it's been a tradition of ex-cadet classes at a particular point in time, and my class is not quite there yet, to find a way to weave themselves into the tapestry of the college grounds, often through a key project or a gift. And as you wander the college grounds, you can lay eyes on some of these projects, of course, and you're reminded of the significant efforts of these classes they represent. They are all meaningful and poignant in their own special way. As I mentioned during my change of command speech a few weeks ago, I can't begin to describe to you the feelings that came back to me, that flooded back to me during my initial days here back on college grounds as I wandered and laid eyes on so many of the amazing, magnificent symbols of the college's rich history. And it seems like it was only a short while ago that I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed member of our cadet wing. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, I never laid eyes on the wall, and I was immediately struck by the beauty and grandeur of this amazing structure. La classe 63 nous a légué l'un des projets les plus distinctifs et originaux de l'époque moderne. Comme vous le savez, sans doute, le mur d'honneur a été offert au collège en 2009 par la promotion de la classe 63, lors de la mission de celle-ci au sein de la Veille Brigade. L'entrée dans cette vénérable brigade signifiant, bien sûr, que ses membres étaient arrivés au collège en tant qu'élèves officiers 50 ans plus tôt. Le mur d'honneur est un véritable chef-d'œuvre avec ses 6 pieds, 8 pouces de haut, ses 132 pieds de long et sa structure incurvée, remarquable tant par son originalité que par sa beauté. Comme je suis logé à la résidence du commandant, que se trouve tout près du mur, je suis chaque jour frappé de la magnificence de cette structure et émerveillé chaque soir de la voir resplendir au loin parée de mille feux. Of course, what matters most, ladies and gentlemen, is what the wall stands for. It's the sentiment behind the wall that really matters and is its true defining characteristic. Through the tremendous energy and commitment of Mr. Peter Watson, Captain Navy retired Ted Davey, and I know Mike Morrissey involved as well, and the entirety of the class of '63, with their support of the Ex-Cadet Club and Foundation, the Wall of Honour moved from vision to reality and stands before us today to commemorate the ex-cadets who went on to accomplish great things for the Canadian Armed Forces and for Canada. And I must thank Peter, Ted, and Mike, certainly, having spent a number of opportunities, or having had a couple of opportunities to meet a number of these gentlemen. They are extremely passionate about this gift, and as I had the opportunity last night to speak to 92 of you over at Fort Frontenac, I know how strongly you feel about this particular gift. Living so close to the Wall of Honour with my wife Joy and 2 children, we cannot help but notice the increasing number of cadets that stop by and take a gander and a look and gaze at the structure, often reading the citations. And as we watch from afar at a captivated cadet, we often think, are we really looking at perhaps a future inductee? Le mur d'honneur représente à bien des égards la validation suprême de ce que cherche à accomplir le Collège militaire royal du Canada, c'est-à-dire la formation et l'éducation d'éminents leaders de l'avenir aptes à servir les forces armées canadiennes et la nation. As a first-year cadet at RMC in 1985, one of the fabled names on our Wall of Honour, Air Commodore Leonard Burchell, a previous RMC commandant, he came to speak to us on leadership. And I was very, very fortunate to be randomly selected from my class to have the rare privilege to sit at the head table and serve as his host that particular evening. And I was absolutely captivated by the Savior of Ceylon's stories that he recounted to me in relation to his many years in captivity in Japan during the Second World War. And while I was still at that point in time, and perhaps still today, a relatively naive teenager, I knew that I was in the presence of greatness that evening. Mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes rassemblés ici aujourd'hui pour ajouter au mur d'honneur le nom des 4 personnes qui sont à l'honneur cette année. Quelque diversifiées qui soient leurs contributions, leurs actes et leur héritage se trouvent unifiés par les valeurs qui les ont guidés dans leur réalisation. These 4 ex-cadets made contributions to the military and to Canada in areas of brilliant engineering, cunning battle planning that influenced the outcome of World War II, rare bravery in the face of the enemy, and developing technology and nurturing research to help members of the Canadian Armed Forces fight more effectively in the future. As we prepare to read the citations for the 4 inductees, we acknowledge the contributions of these great ex-cadets and thank them for the example they have provided for all of us and for the future generation of cadets that will be sure to learn about their stellar contributions to the Canadian Armed Forces and, of course, to Canada. For some of you here today, I know these names have special meaning because they are family, and we're extremely grateful that you could join us today to celebrate their outstanding achievements. As Commandant of this magnificent institution, I could not be any prouder of the tremendous example that these 4 ex-cadets have provided us. The class of 1963 and the Wall of Honour Nomination and Selection Committee have done an outstanding job. This year's honorees truly reflect the meaning of the Royal Military College of Canada motto, Truth, Duty, Valour. Thank you very much.
The citations of the 4 inductees will now be read in order of their college number, followed by the unveiling of their respective plaques. Nous allons maintenant lire les citations de nos 4 personnes intronisées et dévoiler leurs plaques respectives dans l'ordre de leur numéro de collège. Before reading the Weller citation, I would like to introduce the members of his family that are present. Peggy Muntz, granddaughter and biographer of her grandfather. Peter Davis, great-grandson, and his 2 children, Elliot and Meredith. Thank you for joining us, and may I ask those that can to please stand.
101 Major John Laing Weller, 1862 to 1932. Born in Cobourg, Ontario, John Weller enrolled at RMC in February 1880, with 33 others, graduating 4th overall in 1883 and receiving a first-class certificate in engineering. Excellent en sport au collège, et plus tard, durant sa carrière militaire, John a obtenu plusieurs distinctions honorifiques. He won the obstacle race and was college rifle champion in 2nd year. Later, with the Dominion Rifle Association, he won the Torberg Prize and Sir Donald Smith Cup and was on the Bisley Rifle Shooting Prize list and Canada's Colaport team to Britain. He was the first winner of the Admiralty Trophy and the American Canoe Association in 1884, and at age 58, runner-up to an Olympic gold medalist for the Canadian Senior Golf Championship in 1920. La carrière militaire de John Weller s'est étendue sur quelques 45 ans. Comme jeune ingénieur, il a d'abord été affecté à faire des relevés pour les écluses sur le système de la rivière de la vallée Trent en 1883 et le canal Murray près de Brighton, Ontario en 1884, ce qui marqua le début de sa carrière d'ingénierie de canal. Avec le 57th Midland Battalion, durant la rébellion du Nord-Ouest, en 1885, il a servi comme staff adjutant au major général J.W. Laurie. He was promoted to assistant engineer for the Cornwall Canal enlargement in 1887 and became resident engineer in 1892. He joined the 59th Stormont and Glengarry Battalion of Infantry in Cornwall and was promoted to major in 1897. En 1900, il a été assigné au Port Colborne Harbor Improvement et plus tard la même année au poste d'ingénieur surveillant du 3e canal Welland. His greatest achievement was his role as engineer in charge of the planning, surveying, and construction of the Fort Welland Ship Canal between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie between 1912 and 1932. To circumvent the natural wonder of Niagara Falls, a man-made wonder was required. The Welland Canal continues to act as the western section of the St. Lawrence Seaway, opened in 1959, the deep waterway that allows large Great Lake-shaped cargo ships and ocean vessels to navigate between the heart of North America and the Atlantic Ocean. The canal ranks as one of the outstanding world engineering feats of the 20th century. À partir de 1824, les premiers parcours du canal ont trouvé leur chemin à travers la péninsule et vers le haut de l'escarpement Niagara en suivant le cours naturel des eaux parce que la technologie n'était pas disponible pour faire des relevés et construire en ligne droite pour la dénivellation de 99,5 mètres, soit 326,5 pieds. Sous le leadership de Weller, le reste du monde a vu un concept entièrement nouveau de construction de canal. À l'époque, le 4e canal Welland était le plus grand ouvrage de travaux publics effectué au Canada et l'un des plus grands au monde. Bien que modelé sur le canal Panama, la montée atteinte est plus haute sur une distance beaucoup plus courte. Weller cut a straight path over the escarpment, creating a more efficient and direct route. Weller incorporated reinforced concrete in his design, a concept he had employed earlier in building the world's tallest reinforced concrete poles to carry electric transmission lines over the second Welland Canal. Weller a instauré l'usage de machinerie massive pour épauler et exploiter sa construction massive. Alors que le 3e canal Welland comportait 26 écluses en pierre, Weller a réduit le 4e canal Welland à 8 immenses écluses pour accommoder les gros navires modernes dans un système à 2 directions. The control locks at Lake Erie was the longest in the world at 1,148 feet. The canal is 43.4 kilometers, 27 miles long, and its locks, which provide an average lift of 14.2 meters, 46.5 feet, are 233.5 meters, 766 feet long, and 24.4 meters, 80 feet wide. Port Weller, Ontario, was named in John Weller's honor. 2 Weller Islands may be found in the Georgian Bay. The Concrete Pole Company was founded in 1905 by John Weller and W.H. Sullivan. Concrete Pipe and Products Limited was founded by John Weller for the manufacture of concrete pipe, concrete block, and other concrete products. Il a siégé au Conseil de la Société canadienne d'ingénieurs civils de 1915 à 1917. En 1932, l'année d'ouverture du canal Welland et l'année de sa mort, Weller a été nommé membre à vie de l'Institut canadien des ingénieurs. John's only son, 748 William Henry Weller, graduated from RMC in 1909 and joined the Royal Canadian Flying Corps. Sur la plaque d'inscription, nous retrouvons athlete, canal builder, Whalen Ship Canal engineer in charge.
Before we read General Loewen's citation, I would like to introduce the members of his family that are present. Charles Loewen, older son, his wife Suzanne, and their son John, Charles' brother John, and his wife Julia. Thank you for coming. May I ask you all to please stand.
1246, General Sir Charles Falkland Loewen, GCB, KBE, DSO, 1900 to 1986. Charles Loewen entered RMC in 1916 at age 16 and in 1918 became a second lieutenant in the Royal Field Artillery. As he was deemed to be too young for war service with the Canadian Army, he saw service in India from 1920 to 1938 and as staff officer in the ill-fated Norwegian campaign in 1940. Durant la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, il a détenu plusieurs postes supérieurs dans l'armée britannique en tant que commandant du 10e corps de l'artillerie royale et chef d'état-major adjoint. Il a pris part à la campagne d'Italie dans la vallée de l'Irie, incluant Monte Cassino. In 1943, he dropped invasion plans for Normandy entitled Operation Skyscraper, which formed part of the basis for the invasion in 1944 as Operation Overlord. By war's end, he was general officer commanding 6th Armored Division. Après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, Loewen est devenu l'officier général britannique, l'officier général commandant à Trieste, Italie, ayant sous son commandement une division britannique, une brigade américaine et une brigade yougoslave. En 1947, à titre d'officier général commandant de la première division blindée, il a pris part au maintien de la paix en Palestine. He was knighted in 1951 by His Majesty George VI, and in 1953, as Commander-in-Chief, Far East Land Forces, he was deployed with 60,000 troops to the British Far East to quell a communist insurrection in Malaya. In 1956, he was appointed the Adjutant General of the British Army and aide-de-camp to Her Majesty the Queen. Le général Loewen a reçu les décorations suivantes. Chevalier Grand-Croix de l'Ordre du Bain, compagnon de l'Ordre du Service distingué et chevalier commandeur de l'Ordre de l'Empire britannique. Upon retirement in 1959, he returned to Canada, settling on the West Coast initially and then in Mansfield, Ontario in 1978 until his death in 1986. General Loewen's funeral at Camp Borden was attended by senior Army staff and ex-cadets. Le général Loewen était marié et avait 2 fils. Plaque inscription: Field Commander, Normandy Invasion Planner, Peacekeeper, Adjutant General of British Army.
Very good. I would like to invite Lieutenant Colonel Merritt's son, Cecil, from Vancouver, to stand, please. Thank you.
1866, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Cecil Ingersoll Merritt, VC, ED, 1908-2000. Born in Vancouver, Cecil Merritt entered RMC in 1925 at the age of 16. Graduating with honors, he joined the Seaford Highlanders of Canada, a militia regiment, studied for admission to the bar and became a barrister in 1932. He also played rugby for the Merritt Club in Vancouver. Au déclenchement de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, il a été promu major et muté en Angleterre. Il a suivi le cours d'état-major de guerre à Camberley en 1942 et a été nommé commandant du South Saskatchewan Regiment, qui se préparait à devenir le flanc droit de la 2e division d'infanterie canadienne pour le tristement célèbre raid de Dieppe le 19 août 1942. From the point of landing, Lieutenant Colonel Merritt's unit advance had to be made across a bridge in Pourville, which was swept by very heavy machine gun, mortar, and artillery fire, from which the first parties were mostly destroyed and the bridge thickly covered with bodies. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt walked calmly across the bridge at least 4 times under a storm of fire to conduct parties of his men to the eastern side. Il a organisé et mené ensuite des assauts contre plusieurs des casemates et autres positions ennemies qui dominaient le pont et le village. Although twice wounded, he organized the withdrawal of his battalion from the beaches and mounted a rear guard that enabled the greater part of the South Saskatchewan Regiment and Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders of Canada to escape to sea. Merritt et ses hommes de l'arrière-garde n'ont pas pu être ramenés et ont été contraints de se rendre. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt was awarded the Victory Cross for bravery and leadership under fire. He escaped the first prisoner of war camp in Bavaria, but was recaptured and sentenced to solitary confinement. Ultimately, he was transferred to the maximum security prisoner of war camp at Colditz Castle until liberated towards the end of the war. Après la guerre, le lieutenant-colonel Merritt est retourné à son cabinet d'avocat à Vancouver et a servi comme député de la circonscription électorale de Vancouver-Burwood jusqu'en 1949. En 1951, il a été nommé colonel honoraire des Seaford Highlanders of Canada. Il a aussi été membre du conseil d'administration de la Mount Pleasant War Memorial Community Cooperative Association jusqu'en 1994. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt died in Vancouver at the age of 91. His decorations and medals are displayed in the Canadian War Museum. They include the Victory Cross, World War II Service Medals, the Queen Elizabeth II Coronation Medal, the Canadian Centennial Medal, the Queen Elizabeth II Silver Jubilee Medal, the 125th Anniversary of the Confederation of Canada Medal, and the Efficiency Decoration with Canada Bar. Cecil's father, Captain C.M. Merritt, was killed in World War I in the Second Battle of Ypres in 1915. Cecil married in 1937 and had 2 sons and a daughter. His son, 5110 Cecil Jameson Merritt, graduated from RMC in 1962. His plaque inscription reads, Victory Cross at Dieppe, Member of Parliament, Lawyer.
Finally, we have our last 2013 inductee, Colonel Leggat. Sir, may I ask you to please stand with your wife Denise and your daughter Michelle, spouse Julian, and son Tim.
(8833) Colonel Lennox John Leggat, CD, PhD. A native of Montreal, John Leggat entered RMCC as a Reserve Entry Training Plan, or RETP cadet, in 1967, graduating with first-class honors in mechanical engineering in 1971. He studied aeroacoustics at the University of British Columbia, graduating with a Master's of Science in 1973 and a PhD in 1976. Durant son séjour au RMCC, il a été membre de l'équipe de tennis, il a joué au water polo et lacrosse et a été membre du chœur. En 4e année, il a été élève officier des communications de l'escadre. Dr. Leggat served as a defense scientist at the Defense Research Establishment Atlantic in Halifax, one of 5 Department of National Defense, or D&D, research facilities. There, he undertook and led research in hydroacoustics and hydromechanics. He became a recognized authority in underwater noise and played a leading role in quieting the ships and submarines of the Royal Canadian Navy. Pendant ce temps, il était aussi professeur auxiliaire en génie physique et génie mécanique à la Technical University of Nova Scotia, qui fait maintenant partie de l'Université Dalhousie. Dr. Leggat continued his service with the reserves until 2000. As a lieutenant colonel, he commanded 33 Service Battalion, was Deputy Chief of Staff at Land Force Atlantic Area Headquarters, and Deputy Commander of the Western Nova Scotia Militia District. He attended National Defense College in 1986 and 87. En 1989, il a été nommé directeur général Opérations de recherche et de développement au QGDN et est déménagé à Ottawa en 1990. En 1993, il est devenu directeur général du Centre de recherche pour la défense à Ottawa. Dr. Leggat was appointed Chief of Research and Development for D&D in 1997 and became the driving force and founding CEO of Defense Research and Development Canada, or DRDC, a special operating agency of D&D, providing national leadership in defense science to the Canadian Forces and Department of National Defense. Coincidentally, Colonel Leggat was Director Reserves from 1992 until 1998. Comme directeur réserve, il a été un promoteur novateur des réservistes du Canada en initiant le programme Get Well pour améliorer et égaliser le traitement et les indemnités pour les réservistes. Il a aussi travaillé à conserver le PFIR au CMRC et à augmenter les possibilités des réservistes de s'instruire et a généralement rehaussé leur profil à l'intérieur des forces canadiennes. Dr. Leggat became Assistant Deputy Minister of Science and Technology at Department of National Defense in 2000. He worked closely with Drs. Plant and Cowan at RMCC to provide a mechanism for RMCC faculty members to compete for and receive the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada grants. Under Dr. Leggat's guidance, the DRDC Centre for Security Science was created as a joint endeavor between DRDC and Public Safety Canada. Durant sa carrière, le Dr. Leggat a siégé sur une trentaine de comités et de conseils scientifiques consultatifs et a reçu de nombreux prix et distinctions. Il a été le représentant canadien durant plusieurs années auprès de l'Organisation pour la recherche et la technologie de l'OTAN, et il a dirigé l'équipe qui a rédigé la stratégie actuelle de l'OTAN en matière de recherche et de technologie. John a reçu le prix de leadership de l'Association professionnelle des cadres supérieurs de la fonction publique du Canada pour avoir créé la RDDC. En 2000, il a reçu la médaille Robert W. Angus de la Société canadienne de génie mécanique. Il a été élu membre honoraire de l'Institut canadien des ingénieurs en 2002. From 2005 until 2013, Dr. Leggat was a consultant and senior advisor with CFN Consultants in Ottawa. In 2007, he was awarded the Professional Engineers of Ontario Engineering Medal. In 2008, he was elected president of the Canadian Academy of Engineering and assumed the presidency of the International Council of Academies of Engineering and Technological Sciences. In 1999 and 2000, John was president of the RMC Club. John was preceded at the college by his father, 2098 Brigadier W.C. Leggat, and two uncles, Sidney Williams and Jack Wallace. Son épouse Denise et lui ont deux enfants et habitent à Ottawa. His plaque inscription reads, Aero Hydroacoustic Scientist, D&D and NATO Research Leader, and Reservist Champion.
Well, first of all, let me say it's a great pleasure to be here today. And General Tremblay, Commandant Brigadier General Meisinger, Mrs. Meisinger, Principal Dr. Cowan, and family and friends of Major John Laing Weller, General Sir Charles Falkland Loewen, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Cecil Ingersoll Merritt, my family and friends, members of the class of 1963, members of the RMC Club and Foundation, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the family and friends of my co-honorees, and on my own behalf, I wish to thank the chair and members of the Wall of Honour Nomination Committee for the great honor that's been bestowed upon ex-cadets 101 Weller, 1246 Loewen, H. 1866 Merritt, and 8833 Leggat, who today are inducted into this Wall of Honour. Au nom des membres de famille et des amis de mes co-récipiendaires, je tiens à remercier très chaleureusement le président et les membres du comité de mise en candidature du Medal d'honneur du Collège militaire royal du Canada pour le très grand honneur fait aux anciens élèves 101 Weller, 1246 Loewen, H. 1866 Merritt et 8833 Leggat, dont leurs noms seront inscrits sur ce Medal d'honneur aujourd'hui. Il est formidable de voir les membres de famille ici en force aujourd'hui, et je tiens à féliciter la classe de 63 de s'assurer que les familles sont parties de cette cérémonie. Tout au long de ma carrière, j'ai apprécié le soutien et l'aide de mon épouse Denise, et je la remercie pour son amour et son affection au cours de nos nombreuses années ensemble. In thinking what I would say to you today, and it took quite a lot of reflection, I must say, I remembered back to the day that I arrived at the college. I departed Montreal for Kingston with a classmate to be Jim Oakes, who was also traveling from Montreal and whom I'd met during one of the selection processes. We were really impressed that the department had booked us in the parlor car. And as neither of us had been to RMC before, we talked about what we might expect when we arrived here. Could we expect a first-class reception at RMC? After all, we were traveling on the train first class. Well, I think as most people in the audience know, this was not to be. And as we disembarked in Kingston from the old CN Outer Station, which I think some of you will remember, that was on what was known as the long curve, which was the takeoff from the Toronto-Montreal run, we were met by a number of our seniors smartly turned out in their number 4s. And this being their year of entry into the old brigade, I'd just like to say to my seniors that it was an interesting year. It was a great year, and I think we had a good time together. I remember their precisely pressed uniforms with the gold trim and not a trace of frost. And in those days of flower children and hippies, we looked out the window and we said, gee, their hair is really short. So we were formed up along with those who had arrived on the train from Toronto and told to do up all the buttons on our jacket and marched onto a bus and taken directly to the college. I really didn't see very much of Kingston for several weeks after that. And what happened when we got there was, as I said to my parents in a frantically penned first letter home, I haven't stopped running since I got here, and neither have any of the other guys. These circumstances were likely much the same for the other 3 ex-cadets that we were honoring today. For Charles Loewen and Cecil Merritt, Kingston would have been the end of a very long journey from Vancouver. And for John Weller, a somewhat shorter trip from Cobourg. But all were presumably met at the station, formed up, loaded onto a horse-drawn wagon or a bus to be taken to RMC. And what followed was an education that combined all aspects of military, academic, physical, and leadership training, and a keen desire to get things done right, underpinned by our motto, Truth, Duty, Valour. And so it was that the careers of these 4 ex-cadets began. Interestingly, their career spanned a period from 1880 to today, a total of 133 years. John Weller, as we've heard, entered RMC when Canada had just celebrated its 13th anniversary. It was a time of expansion and industrialization in Canada and in North America. The steam engine had revolutionized transportation, and there was a demand for better waterways and more and better railroads. Major Weller was a civil engineer who gained his experience in canal construction in the late 19th century, and he was the driving force behind the 3rd and 4th Welland canals. It is a testament to the foresight and innovation of this engineer that the 4th Canal continues to be used today, more than 80 years after its completion. The times of Charles Loewen and Cecil Merritt were marked by global upheavals and war. The empires of Europe had collapsed, and a new order was yet to gel. The world was experiencing revolution, insurrection, financial crisis, and war on a global scale. General Loewen entered RMC in 1916 at the height of the First World War. Commissioned as a British Army officer after graduation, he served with distinction throughout his military career. And during the Second World War, his military talents were pivotal to the success of D-Day's Operation Overlord and to the Allied victories in the Italian campaign. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt graduated from RMC in the year of the beginning of the Great Depression. He was an officer with the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada and mobilized in 1939 at the start of World War II. His gallantry and leadership at Dieppe are legendary, and he is only one of 2 ex-cadets to have been awarded the Victoria Cross. Et mes périodes étaient celles de la guerre froide et la lutte contre le terrorisme. La guerre froide a engendré une course à la technologie militaire, ce qui n'avait jamais été vu. Elle a produit des systèmes spatiaux, la chasseur à réaction rapide, les armes de précision et des systèmes d'intelligence à toutes sortes. Elle a nous-mêmes donné la genèse de l'Internet. La science de la défense au Canada est un chef de file au cours de la guerre froide. Et entre plusieurs réalisations notables, elle a donné à la Marine royale canadienne la technologie afin de jouer un rôle de premier plan sur la surveillance de sous-marins à propulsion nucléaire. Après les attaques terroristes aux États-Unis, ceux qui dirigeaient la science de la défense ont unifié la science nationale pour améliorer la capacité du Canada à faire face aux menaces terroristes chez nous et à l'étranger. The careers of this year's honorees are not the same, and the challenges of their times are quite different. In common, they had the foundation provided by this institution that continues to produce young men and women of the highest quality, educated and trained to lead. Graduates of RMC constitute a small group of Canadians. Fewer than 30,000 have arrived here since 1876 when the college opened. But their contributions to the building of this nation during times of peace and war have been tremendous. Like those who came before them, the cadets graduating from RMC today are equipped to deal with what the future may bring and to uphold the values and freedoms that define this country. As ex-cadets, graduates, students, and staff, we hold the heritage and history of RMC close to our hearts. Great lives have forged this heritage, lives of magnificent deeds and unbending commitment from so many who have passed through this institution. The stories of their lives need to be told, and the Wall of Honour is a very important way of ensuring that generations of Canadians to come know about the great contributions of those who have been through RMC. 4 are being recognized today. 15 other names have been inscribed on the wall since 2009, and more will be added as the years to come. The class of 1963 donated the Wall of Honour upon their entry into the old brigade, with the intent that those recognized on the wall would inspire prospective recruits, existing RMC students, RMC graduates, RMC staff, and all Canadians to be the best that they can be through dedication, hard work, application of their talents and training, and by letting Truth Duty Valour guide their lives. RMC has developed a considerable cadre of great Canadians during the past 137 years. And in return, these Canadians have helped forge the wonderful reputation for which RMC is known today. We are fortunate to have such quality in our alumni, and it is fitting that we recognize through this Wall of Honour outstanding careers such as the ones we have heard about today. So in conclusion, and on behalf of the families of ex-cadets 101 John Weller, 1246 Charles Loewen, H1866 Cecil Merritt, and myself, 8833, I extend to the class of 1963, the college, and both the RMC Club and Foundation, sincere appreciation for the honor bestowed on this year's Wall of Honours inductees. Thank you very much.